Welcome back to the Dusty Wheel. I'm your host, the Innkeeper, and this is our live call-in watch party, all about the works of the cast and crew of the upcoming Wheel of Time TV show on Amazon Prime. And tonight, as you can tell, we're going to be covering Obey. And to go along with this watch party, the writer and director is here to discuss the movie with us. So without further ado, let me introduce Jamie Jones to the show. Jamie, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Hi.
It's
Lovely
awesome
to be here.
Yeah. So before we dive in, before we start that up, Jamie, I just want to ask you, how do you explain the film or summarize it for people?
I mean, basically, the film was based on real life events that happened back in 2011, when a huge riot took over the streets of London and then spread out across England, causing huge amounts of damage and many people killed. It originally started because a young man, Mark Duggan, was killed by a police officer, and that's what triggered it. And then obviously the initial grievances turned into just sort of more generalized looting and rioting, people organizing on their phones to like meet at certain spots and things like that. And I guess I was just kind of, obviously it created a lot of political discourse at the time, and lots of people had very different views on whether they empathized with the rioters or, you know, various different views, conflicting views. And I just felt like it was a kind of interesting world to set a movie. So the movie is fictional, but it's based on a kind of fictional character, which is played by Marcus. And he's in that world, and it's really about his journey of how he kind of gets wrapped up and caught up in the kind of the more like reactionary violence and of the actual film, you know. But I guess it's a way of trying to understand where some of those. It's not specifically about the events of Mark Duggan being shot. It's not so much. There's a documentary that's made about that. It's not about that. It's more about like that general frustration and anger that came afterwards. That's what I was kind of interested in. And yeah, it's kind of a film. It's my take on where I think some of that anger comes from.
Yeah, it's really impactful that way. I think when I first jumped into it to watch it, I thought it might be about the events themselves. And I quickly understood that no, it was actually a much more personal look at the events, which I thought was much more compelling. So yeah, thank you for kind of giving that brief introduction to it. I'll jump in. Kind of the first question I have for you about this is, Marcus himself, and so as we begin here, what was it about Marcus that kind of caught your eye when he came in auditions for this role?
I think what Marcus definitely has is restraint in his performance. He has a way, I think, of pulling you in to his performance as opposed to just projecting his performance, you know. So he's just a very subtle performer, you know, and very believable. There was actually one. When I did the audition, it was one of the scenes that we did in the auditions was the scene with his mother, and they're having a conversation around the dinner table in the kitchen, and she tries to give him some money. She's feeling guilty about something. I can't remember exactly what the scene is again, but she tries to give him some money, and he basically just sort of, he doesn't want the money. What he wants is he wants something much more, you know. He obviously just wants a mother who he can rely on, and, you know,
right,
unconditional love and all that. And then the line is, he turns around and he just says, you know, am I allowed to swear on this?
Yeah, you feel free. Yeah.
You know, he just turns around. I just don't want your fucking money, you know. And it was like, honestly, it was that line when, because, you know, and obviously all the different actors did it, and, you know, it was a hard line in a way to get, because you can overcook that, you know, because obviously it's quite a big like thing to say to your own mother, sort of thing. It was just the way that Marcus did it. It just felt so, the way he reacted just felt so real, and it just came from somewhere. I was just like, wow, that was It was that line, really. When he did that line, I was just like, yeah.
That was the moment. Yeah, it's a really yeah. If you find that line, that'll come up here as we're viewing this. The line that was just described, and yeah, it's a very an impactful moment for him in the movie, and yeah, extremely believable. Like what's brought us to that point. As we begin the movie here, I wanted to ask you about this. I noticed you had Marcus. You know, they walk up the street here. A lot of the conversations going on between his friends. He doesn't say anything, actually, and he's sitting far in the back of the group. But he is the one that kind of hits the window, and then he doesn't worry about grabbing it. He just kind of runs. Was that purposeful, having him kind of in the background? I know he's a taller guy, he's a bigger guy, but there was just something kind of understated about that moment. I kind of wondered if you meant to do that.
Yeah, I think it's to do with his character. You know, he's a lot of what's going on in his world is kind of happening inside of his head, you know, and he's not a particularly great communicator, you know, and he's not a bad communicator when he does communicate, but he often he's quite stoic guy, I think, you know, he keeps a lot of those things bottled up, you know, and so I guess it was that scene just kind of reflects the characterization of Leon, you know.
Yeah, I noticed it, and it happens a little bit later here. But he also he walks into the party that they go to last, and he follows his friend outside, and his friend's the first one that kind of hits on Twiggy, I think it is, first. Yeah. And she kind of goes over to him, you know. Definitely it's really well done from the perspective of really kind of buying it, like you said, that his world is really in his head, and he's there, he's part of it. It's not that he won't talk to anybody, but I just thought that was really, at least that's something I noticed. And again, you know, him always kind of being behind the group there and trying to figure out or find his place, I thought was really, really impactful. Really, yeah, I bought into him as Leon for those reasons, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and a lot, you know, you got to give a lot of credit to Marcus, because a lot of that stuff comes from him, you know. I mean, I obviously block out the scenes, but you know, in a scene like that, you know, I give them a lot of, with that opening scene specifically, I said, look, you know, we're going to basically frame it like this. We're not going to cut, you know, it's just going to be a locked off frame. We're going to focus pull with you up the street. That's your stage essentially. And I said, you can move in and out, but I don't mind if you go out of frame, but for a few seconds, but you've got to come back into frame. Don't linger out of frame. And then obviously I gave them their marks where they were going to smash the window and all that sort of stuff. But, you know, in terms of like lingering back and, you know, some of that stuff, you know, that's like Marcus's kind of approach to the character, you know. So, yeah.
Yeah, that really works. And then a lot of credit to Marcus there for kind of working within those kind of the idea. And because in this moment, right, we see him after this, and what I see going on right now is he's coming back to his mother, and you've just had this moment, you've been introduced to him, he smashes the window, and then he runs and comes back, and here he is kind of helping her, what seems to be, you know, some type of drug induced, you know, or she seems to be addicted to something at this point. We don't really know what it is, and just how much he does care for her. Is there a backstory here to what you were writing? Because we don't, that I recall, ever meet his father. Is there a backstory here that viewers, if they knew that, it would add, you know, complexity to the story and the character themselves? Or did you just kind of go like, father's out of the picture and move forward from a writing standpoint?
Well, the way that it was written, I kind of I did a kind of first pass. Well, I did quite a few first passes, a few passes on the script to get it into kind of a good structure. And then what I did is I worked with this this charity group who basically take disadvantaged kids from these areas, a lot of young people who were caught up in the riots themselves, and they get them into theatre and acting and do these kind of parade performances where you can go and watch them in these like spaces, and you're the audience, but the actors move around you, and yeah, it's really exciting stuff. And I worked with them initially I approached them more just from a casting point of view, because I wanted to find as much cast from that group as possible, because I knew that was where a lot of the authenticity would come from. But then we got more involved with the group, and then I started doing workshops with them and teasing out some of the storylines and some of the backstory lines. You know, him sort of, he's been in homes and his dad hasn't been around, and a lot of that stuff, that backstory stuff, came from those workshops with those kids, you know, who had very similar. This scene right now, it came directly from one of the actors who's in the film. She's the girl who plays Little M, the one who's quite fiery in his group, you know, Jasmine Jobson. And she was telling me, in fact, about like this kind of scene that she had been through herself, you know, and you know, it's something similar. I don't know the exact details of what she'd been through, but yeah, it was. So a lot of the, and I remember like batting these ideas back and forth, and that was where a lot of the development of these backstories and stuff came from, really.
Yeah, that's fascinating. The process you had gone through as far as writing it. This kind of, and where I'm seeing it on Twitch right now, he was just laying in his bed and he's boxing here. There are a lot of scenes where he's really in his head. Was that something from a guidance standpoint? Was that like another one of those where you're just framing it like you're in this room, you're really frustrated, give me something? Like, how, from a director's standpoint, what did Marcus kind of put the pacing and all those things to kind of make us feel like he's just really frustrated and kind of in his head in those moments?
Yeah, one of the things I was interested in is, like, obviously with inner city life, is the lack of space. So I kind of like, I really wanted to make his bedroom sort of feel a bit like a prison, I guess, in one sense, you know. Okay, this kind of idea that he's like pacing back and forth, you know, and also it being like a prison because it's not a safe place either, you know, for him, because, you know, the mother's boyfriend is a really awful guy, you know, who's a dangerous character, you know, so it's not somewhere where he can retreat to. And I guess that was a very, you know, clear decision that I wanted to make, because I think, you know, when you have privilege, often what privilege gives you is somewhere to retreat to, you know. So it's like a safety net. You can always fall back on going back to your nice country manor, or even, you know, it doesn't even have to be that kind of privilege. It can just be like, you know, just being able to get out of the city, you know. My dad was a community social worker in London when I was younger, and, you know, so many of the kids there, you know, had never even left London, you know. So many kids never even seen the sea, and they live on an island, you know. It's it's like, okay, it's mad. So and I think that lack of perspective, you know, if you're living in that claustrophobic environment, you know, it's very hard to kind of like breathe. And, you know, so that scene when he's on the canal boat with Twiggy, and she shows him this kind of, almost like showing him this other world, really, you know, where there's space and silence and somewhere to reflect, you know. It's like, if you don't get those moments, you know, you're living in this kind of high intensity world, and and I think that can lead to a lot of the problems that led to the riots, you know. You know, I think it's a lot of frustration and reaction because you don't have the perspective to sit back and go, actually, I'm not going to go and burn that building down, you know. Maybe that's not a great idea, you know. Maybe there's other ways to vent my anger. I can maybe vent it politically, but if you don't have a chance to reflect, you know, then just burning shit down, you know, feels like the right thing to do, you know.
Well, the space thing, I think, is a really one that didn't even hit me. This idea of his space and where he had space to deal with all these things. It was such a small amount of space. Like you said, his mother's boyfriend is not a good guy, and you can tell that he's always almost, you know, trying to make space there. Which for Marcus, you know, as I was watching, he's a big guy, but, you know, he does a great job of, like, you know, kind of almost I don't know what you call
Shrinking
it.
himself.
Yeah, shrinking. Yeah,
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's so effective in this role. Like I really loved that. And there, you brought up the boat scene, which is really interesting. I guess he tells the boyfriend, like, well, if I had a boat, I would name it just Leon's boat or something like that. It was a very kind of like, right, like it wasn't. He didn't have any like grandiose idea about boats. It's just like, this is my space.
Yeah.
And I liked the idea around this, that the boat, he almost saw that as like, I would have space. I would actually have space to breathe. I would have space to think, and I don't have that right now. So yeah, I love that you brought that up. That's a great aspect of this that I hadn't even considered until you brought that. Boxing. I know we kind of went past boxing here. We're in this party, but why boxing? Why was the choice to kind of give him that hobby, if you will?
I mean, I've always just personally kind of had a weird obsession with boxing myself. I made like a documentary about these young working class boxers when I was younger for BBC, and again, like, sort of coming from not having much privilege and boxing being this kind of like way out, seeing as well. But it's such a complex thing, because in some ways it offers so much self-esteem, to people who don't have much. It's a great way to, stay fit and, and to have focus and have community and like self-esteem, and also a great place to channel, certain feelings into a more constructive way, but it's also a very dangerous sport. And ultimately, it's fighting, isn't it? It's kind of quite a violent sport as well, so it's kind of quite a complex thing, and it's, you generally don't see posh people boxing very much, not in a professional sense, most boxers come from tough, upbringing and stuff, so it just felt kind of right, really, that he would, sort of boxing being something where he's trying to channel his frustration into a kind of positive thing, like, but then obviously because of austerity and all sorts of stuff, the boxing gym closes down, and it's like, it's a little comment on austerity, because obviously, the riots were obviously a big part of that as well, so.
Yeah, that aspect of the when it closes down and then he's back in his house and then he sets up like a bag that he can. It's almost like the frustration of the boyfriend, his mother's boyfriend, and then not having an outlet that he kind of depended upon with the boxing side, and seeing him up in his room and kind of hitting that bag that he set up for him is a really big moment. At least for like, as I was watching, I was like, oh man, like. That really did, like you said, it became an outlet for him. It did provide some level of self-esteem because of, when you look at the way that, I don't know, some of the others treated him during the show, because there's a certain defensive aspect to it. And you see him willing to defend himself, but he definitely kind of holds back. And in admirable ways, when his friends are saying like, his friend holds up, I think it's a gas can or something, like they're going to go do some, they're going to go do something, and it was a tragic moment, at least I read it that way, which is, he was like, no, I can't do this. But these are the people these are his friends. Like his mother doesn't really give him the love and respect that he wants. He doesn't get that necessarily elsewhere. And in the boxing, he kind of finds a place, but with his friends, he has a home. And for them to kind of, in that moment, I can't remember what the words his friend said, but he basically just said, you're betraying us,
Yeah.
We're your family, you're betraying us. And he leaves that moment. There's like a loss. And, he's standing up for like, no, I don't want to take it this far, but how am I leaving you behind? Yeah. So that's how I kind of read it. It was just a really tragic event for him, which doesn't necessarily get that much better, as it goes on, because although I do like, I'm getting to the end here, if people have like jumping to the very end of the show, but I do like that at the very end, he goes back and you see him kind of hug his friend after that moment with Twiggy where he's found her and he's chucked the camera through the window. He's kind of returned to his friends who were there waiting for him, and obviously I think there's some complex questions at the end of the movie that come up that I'm not sure. I watched it and I was like, I'm not sure where is his arc here? So maybe that's one question I have for you. And we do have a caller here. So let me, before I ask you that question, let me bring that caller in. They've been waiting. So let me welcome Emerald to the show. Emerald, welcome to Watch Parties. How you doing?
Hello, my friend. How are you?
Good, good. So you have Jamie here. What was your question for him?
Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Emerald.
There's actually a lot, going on with this movie. Like I started off really disliking the character because he was the one who smashed in the car window. And I've had that done to me several times. And I'm like, God, I hate him so much. But then but then things kind of move around and, there's just a lot going on. But other than saying all this, it was an interesting film, but what I really could not figure out is why it's called Obey.
Oh, interesting question. Yeah, I wanted to ask that too. Yeah, great question.
Yeah, we sort of, spent quite a bit of time talking about different titles and stuff. And in the end, I felt like Obey kind of just captured kind of the message of the film in a way, because the idea being that we the social contract is that we are supposed to obey our place, in society, like where we put. I know this is kind of like maybe slightly different in America, but I think it definitely has connections as well, but the idea being that we are, we're supposed to obey, there isn't social mobility, is a little bit of a myth, it's very, very difficult to move up your class. I know, as I said, I know it's slightly different in America, but I think it's still pretty tough there too, and so I guess the idea of it being that we are supposed to obey, and then obviously, in the end, these guys just refusing to obey. But in the end, what actually changes, after the riots, loads of people got arrested, nothing's actually changed. Ultimately, they just are still obeying the system that they are raging against.
Does it have to...
Interesting.
I'm sorry. Does it have to do with there are a lot of different things going on that he might have to obey, like going along with his friends, who wanted to do more than just, his friend took advantage of the riots to steal some stuff. And, he kind of didn't obey them. And then by the time you get to the end, he's not obeying the police, which admittedly he's kind of provoked, but, so there's a lot of dynamics, and I wondered if it was just kind of going in, it was taking in all of those things, or if you had something specific that you felt like he was not obeying.
No, I think it's all of that, really. I think ultimately he is just, really frustrated with his position in life. I think ultimately he just wants a better lot in life, really, and he's not willing to obey his place. But yeah, I think there's power struggles all over the place in the film, like with his friends, with his mother's boyfriend, with there's all these different power struggles, and it's like which ones are you going to obey, so it's
I like it. Emerald, great question. Thank you very much for calling in with that question.
Thank you. I thought the film was excellent, so good job.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Yep, take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
So yeah, that's that definitely does strike you, and I kind of felt that same way, the way you were explaining it, which was, how do you know what to obey, right? Like you see people that abuse the system, the people that are running the system abuse the system. You see, you see people that are supposed to be helping you. They don't really necessarily help you out. They're trying, but maybe they don't. And are you supposed to obey them? Or are you supposed to obey the rules that he learned at the boxing club? You know, when they try to stop, they're like, hey, stop. You know, what's the level that you're supposed to? You know, he sees people, you know, maybe his mother here. He sees his friends, and yeah, how do you make those decisions? And, you know, so I think that was, yeah, it did take me like, I think I understood the title better as I watched, if that makes sense, right? It was like, obey, what could this possibly be about? And it really kind of, you know, resolved itself in that way as I watched. So that I really liked. And there's this aspect right now of the show that at least where we're playing here, where he's finally, you know, this is that part we talked about. I see him here with his mother and the boyfriend, and he's in the kitchen. And, you know, he's trying to make his space and he can't. So it kind of goes back to that, like, where do I fit in aspect to him. And there's a later scene between him and the boyfriend where they're sitting and watching the news. And the boyfriend comes in and turns that off. And there's so much said there without it being said. And that's where I, you know, from a direction standpoint, do you remember that scene as far as, you know, like Marcus doesn't say anything, and I don't know if in the script, but he just looks at him and walks out, and so much is said. Like, yeah. It's a very big scene.
Yeah,
but nothing is said, and you know in that moment, I guess, that some confrontation is coming. You like, as soon as the clicking of the remote, I felt as a viewer like this is going to come to a head at some point.
Yeah, and it's not going to end well.
No, and I kind of wondered how that moment would come, and now we know, as you watch further in the show, obviously that shows up. There is a moment I did want to ask you about. I know this is kind of a random question, but Marcus has one of those electric racetracks, and there's a moment where he's sitting on the ground with the electric racetrack, and it's playing as you show what looks like actual footage from the protests and the riots. You know, was that done on purpose to kind of, I don't know if I was reading way into it, but it was like just things that don't change. Like this car is just going around and around and around and around and around, and people are unwilling to change or move. So I wasn't sure, like, why the racetrack in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's the mise en scene, I guess, isn't it, of that moment? And yeah, it's exactly that. You know, it's just the monotony, and also the idea that he can't break out of that. Yeah. You know, it's just that idea of just going round and round. And also, like, from a characterization point of view, you know, it's also just to show that he's a big guy, but he's actually just a kid, really, you know. And it's like, it's a toy, it's just a little toy, you know, he's just playing with, you know. And it's like, it's also just to show him that he's not fully matured yet as well, you know. Even though he's quite a stoic guy and he's dealing with a lot of he has to deal with a lot of mature things, but, you know, really he's still just a kid inside, you know. And I think that was part of it as well, you know.
Yeah, he pulls that off really well. You must have been happy because there's a certain innocence, even though he doesn't live in an innocent, you know what I mean? Like, whatever, there's drugs, and there's, you know, all these things going on around him, and there's abuse here, and there's from a social standpoint, so many things going on where he's trying to find his place in the world. And then, yeah, like you said, somehow he pulls off that, like, he's playing with the racetrack, and I believe it, that it's in part that he kind of just wants to go back a little bit, and when he didn't have to think about these things. At the same time, the whole going around and round and round thing really worked for me, you know.
Yeah,
I thought it was
really, and
effective.
Also, like, one of the things originally, when I was doing the title sequence, I originally edited it with some rushes from the Brixton riots, you know, which happened in in the early 80s, you know. Okay. Similar kind of thing. There was stop and search stuff going on at the time, and the police are being really heavy-handed and unfairly targeting, like, you know, African Caribbean people, and, you know, it just triggered a massive sort of uprising again. And again, it's like that thing that, like, you know, things just don't change, you know, and then we see it again in 2011, you know, and there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that it will be coming again, certainly to this country with everything that's going on. we will for sure be seeing something like this again sooner than we probably would like to think about, really.
Yeah,
So
and that's fascinating that you included footage there. Yeah, again, one of those things that I would never have known for sure. I would have.
I didn't include footage of it, but I was originally going to include footage from it.
Gotcha.
But in the end, I just used footage from the 2011 stuff. I just kept it in contemporary. But I was originally going to do this title sequence with footage from the Brixton riots. You know, I can't remember in the end why I didn't, but yeah. But the reason what I'm trying to say is like it links to the you know, the going round and round thing, you know, just like history just repeating itself, you know, just feeling this sense of just feeling like you just cannot break out of these cycles, you know, cycles absolutely. Of abuse and, you know,
Well, let's jump to the end here because I know we got to go. You need to leave us here. When it comes to the award side of this, you know, first of all, congratulations on, you know, the number of awards that this won. How did that shock you, or did you feel like you had something here, and were you just, you know, that moment of like this thing, you know, at least touched people and meant so much to them after all the work you'd put into it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there was definitely a point when, because that we struggled with the edit for quite a while, and we had one editor on board for a while, and then I edited it myself for a while, and there's definitely a period when I was editing it, sort of going down these kind of rabbit holes, and I was kind of just thinking, oh God, you know, I'm not sure I've kind of done it, you know. I was worried I sort of couldn't quite get the edit to work, and the story was kind of there, but like a lot of stuff got cut from the film because it didn't quite work out on the day, and I was worried that like we were losing some emotion, and you know, it was really tricky because obviously I didn't want to leave anything in there that didn't feel authentic. That was my absolute goal, is like everything had to feel authentic, you know. And so, but then the risk then is you know, you're losing a bit of the story, or you're losing a bit of the emotion from the characters. And in the end, we got another editor on board, and she just really managed to pull it together. We'd already done a lot of work on it, so we'd already done a lot of the kind of nuts and bolts work on it, you know. But then what she was able to do is come in and just pull out the emotion, I think, from the characters, just lingering on shots of Marcus a little bit longer than maybe I was cutting away from him a little bit too soon, and she, you know, she just had a great sort of vision for it, really. And all credit to Aggie. You know, I think she kind of helped it, really. And once she had got, you know, on it, and then we started doing a few test screenings, like, you know, I could start to see then people reacting to it in the way that I was hoping for, you know. And so it felt like it was great, really, to get all the awards, and, you know, obviously super proud of that, and everyone that worked on it, you know. Everyone worked so hard and for very little money. Like, you know, it's so hard these days making independent films like this, you know. There's very little money available for this kind of work, you know, because it's you know, it's very hard to market these kind of films and stuff, you know. So any sort of support we can get is really important, you know, to be able to keep going, sort of thing, you know. So that's why it's fantastic that, you know, you're putting a screening on here, and, you know, and people are watching it. And, you know, the most important thing for me is that people watch it, you know. Obviously so it's great, you know, that and, you know, it's just fantastic when I knew Marcus got the role in the Amazon show, you know. I was like, it's just like incredible. And, you know, he phoned me up straight away and was just like, oh, you know, just so grateful. He was like, thank you so much, because I know I owe so much of it to you, and because, you know, this role. And I was like, but, you know, you absolutely smashed it, you know. I mean, he carries the whole film, you know. It's like, if we hadn't found Marcus, you know, I based the whole film around this introverted character, and he had to kind of carry that weight with him the whole way through, you know. So considering he, you know, hadn't done, you know, anything really before this film, You know, it's like, what an amazing, but in a way, I think that was the magic of it, because he also wasn't tarnished in any way. You know, he just came to it like just really chilled, and he was pretty much in like every scene, you know. So it's like, so he's like one of the crew basically, you know. He's like just literally there every scene, you know. And but he was just took everything in his stride, you know. He's just like just such a cool guy, you know, just in real life, you know. And obviously an incredible actor. And but you know, it's just great that he's got this role as Perrin and stuff, because that, you know, hopefully will sort of bring a bit more attention to this film, which I know he's really proud of as well, and was nominated for many awards as well for it. And so that'll really helps, you know. So
yeah, he should be really proud of, again, you don't necessarily know the Wheel of Time character Perrin that he's playing, but a lot of fans are watching this right now of the books, and if they watch Obey, there's a lot of commonalities between that character as far as being in their head and really, you know, spending a lot of time there trying to figure out their place and understanding kind of the decision they need to make here, and having a lot of conflicting kind of ideas and friendships that they need to base that off of. And I think a lot of people watch this, including myself, and say, I can see him embodying this role already. And I had no idea that he was going to be in almost every scene. And so it was fascinating to be able to kind of see that work. And like you said, such an early kind of work in his career. I did have one last request. We have one more caller. Do you have time to take that call?
Yeah, of course. Okay. Yeah. Please.
Let me bring them into the show here. Master of the Deck, welcome to the show. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. Hello, Matt. Hi, Jamie.
Hi.
So, how are you? What's your question?
So I don't want to keep you very long. You can feel free to answer as much of this as you'd like. But I thought, first off, I enjoyed the film. I thought it was fantastic. As you can tell, I live in the United States, and over the past year, following the death of George Floyd, there was a lot of discourse, a lot of stuff happening around the subject in relation to police brutality and the effects on Black community, both in the United States as well as abroad. I noticed, it seems to me that with Leon's story, since the film focuses on him, it's this little microcosm of, you know, what it's poverty within a big city, that there were parallels between what was going on in his life personally, as well as just the sort of the rising tension at large. Was that something that you were doing deliberately? Was it something you thought about while you were writing and directing?
Yeah, sorry, what's the question again? So the rising.
Right. So I thought there were some parallels just in terms of what's going on with Leon in his life, and that there's tension escalating with, you know, abusive boyfriend from his mother, and his relationship with Twiggy, and then the overall, like, the larger situation in terms of, you know, the riot. And the violence.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that was the main, for me, that was the main approach, really, was, you know, kind of like, I wanted to, as his world is becoming more and more pressurized and tense, and more and more jeopardy happening in his life, then you're slowly seeing the riots happening on TV, and it's getting closer and closer, and then you start to see it on outside his house and in the streets around him, and, you know, and it's like this kind of wave that's just slowly engulfing him. And yeah, it's like a metaphor for his own life and his own emotions and things like that. I mean, it's not kind of a film about police brutality in a sense, really. That wasn't one of my focuses. And in fact, one of the things I wanted to do was sort of show the police looking quite vulnerable in the riots as well, because I sort of looked at a lot of the YouTube footage, and, you know, was always quite surprised at how much control the rioters had at points. You know, they really kind of had control of the streets, you know, and so I just wanted to get that across. But, you know, obviously, yeah, there's a whole other, you know, films that can be made about police brutality, which is obviously a massive problem certainly in America, but in the UK as well. It's a huge problem as well. So.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something you absolutely notice. Especially, I almost thought for a moment that pressure might be pulled off at the end, and I didn't anticipate that pressure would continue to increase between those two worlds at the very end. And I think that is, I think at the moment I think I sat back, as that came to a head and those two worlds collided for Leon. I don't know if that's how you felt Master of the Deck. Also, but yeah,
I would agree.
It stops
yes.
right at that. The peak is where it ends, and it's almost this like you're almost tipping over, like you wait, what? Like it comes to a head right in that moment. So, yeah, what an interesting kind of way to go about kind of ending the film there. Any last note, Master of the Deck, before I let you go?
No, not really. Again, just Jimmy, I appreciate you coming to hang out with us. I agree. I love to support independent film. It's a tragedy that over the last year, festivals and whatnot have kind of had to come to a standstill. But thanks for hanging out with all of us nerds.
Yeah, exactly.
My pleasure. I'm a nerd too, deep down.
I really appreciate it. Okay, Master of the Deck. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
All right. Catch you later.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Well, before we let you go here, is there any final note you want to make to the audience, either about this work or things you have coming up that you would like them to keep an eye out for?
Yeah, no, just obviously just wanted to say a huge thank you for everyone watching it, and obviously just keep watching Marcus's career, and I'm sure it's going to be going from strength to strength, and I'm sure that me and Marcus will be working together again at some point soon when he gets a break from his shooting schedules, so I'll have to just find some time now in between the different series and things, but no, we will definitely get a chance to work together again on some stuff. So yeah, please keep watching our work. And also, just, I know it's a bit shameless, but if you do like the film, just please go on to IMDb and give it a good rating. If you enjoyed it, just give us support with your clicks. That would really help as well in terms of getting funding for the next films. If we just got to keep our ratings up and everything like that. So please, that would be fantastic help for us as well. And hope we can do this again.
Yeah, absolutely,
sometime for the next one, maybe.
Let's do it.
The next one I do with Marcus. He'll be the big star then as well. So
yeah, I'd love to have you back again. Thank you so much. Again, sorry to hear you're not feeling too well, but I appreciate you putting the time you did in this evening and chatting about
my pleasure.
This. Really great insights into the creative process, what you had going on here, and I'm so glad you found and able to kind of give Marcus this role. What a fantastic job he did, and I absolutely agree. For those of you that are watching, hopefully you get a chance to share this with people. It's fantastic. It's a fantastic performance just by him alone, although his co-stars were fantastic too. So good night, Jamie. Thank you so much.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, Marcus is a legend.
Yeah, right. I agree.
Absolute legend. Yeah.
We'll talk to you soon, and like I said, maybe we'll see you back here at WoTch Parties at the Dusty Wheel. So
fantastic.
Good night,
great.
Appreciate
Take care, guys. Enjoy the rest of it. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Just hit subscribe, and if you want to see more Wheel Time follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Discord. Can't wait to see you next Wednesday. No, it's terrible. Hey guys, thanks for watching. The show at the Dusty Wheel. If you want to see more Wheel Time content just like this, do us a favor and click that subscribe button. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, Discord, Facebook, Instagram. We're all over the place. We'll see you next Wednesday.